A wall of warm air, whisky fumes and laughter hit Finn's face when he opened the living room door. Yin Yang, the Siamese cat, rubbed past his legs, leaving the room as Finn walked in. She strutted off down the hall with her nose out of joint and her tail held high, annoyed that she had been displaced from her favourite chair. But everyone else in the room seemed excited. Riley, their golden retriever, rushed Finn as he entered and pinned him to the wall. Riley's tail thumped against the sideboard and threatened to knock off the wine glasses. She licked Finn's face and grinned the perpetual grin of canine happiness and optimism. "How cool is this?" her smile said. "More people, more friends, more going on. This is the best." Finn loved his dog. Finn loved this room too. The log fire crackled a welcome. The walls were covered in wild, exciting paintings that Finn's dad had brought back from his trips. David McDougall worked for the Seattle Art Museum as an art expert and had an eye for bright new talent. The tables and mantelpiece were cluttered with Russian and Japanese sculptures. The floor lamp was a fierce Indonesian warrior with a light bulb on his headdress, and the little tables that sat beside the couch and armchairs were made from African conga drums. Above the fireplace was a sombre mahogany pendulum clock they had bought from a family trip to London. It chimed the hours ponderously like Big Ben and added an air of calm dignity to the wild exuberance of the room. Great Uncle Hugh was sitting with his back to Finn in an overstuffed armchair by the fire. Finn had not seen him since the accident. Finn's parents wouldn't talk about it or give him any details. They just said that Uncle Hugh was fine, really, all things considered. By listening at their bedroom door, Finn had gleaned a few facts. The accident had happened when Hugh was exploring caves on the Wigtonshire coast in the southwest of Scotland a few months ago. Finn's dad sounded sympathetic. Finn's mother seemed more critical and scoffed that the old fool should know better. Judging by the laughter and smiles in the room tonight, his Uncle Hugh was none the worse. His skinny legs stuck out at a jaunty angle from behind the armchair as he slapped his thigh. He wore a hairy dark green tweed suit. The pant legs stopped at his knees, tucked into thick cream hiking socks. On his feet were thick brown walking shoes. His neck, face and hands had the ruddy brown complexion of someone who has spent a lifetime outdoors in any weather. As Finn stood quietly by the door, Hugh accepted a glass of whisky from Finn's dad and addressed his mother. "I am only here for a few days, Marjorie. Tomorrow morning I have to catch one of the ferries downtown and sail up to Victoria in Canada. I am giving a lecture to the British Columbia Salvage Society tomorrow evening. On the Tobermory treasure, of course. Everybody likes to hear about the Spanish galleon sunk in Tobermory Bay. I might stay on for a day or two and go skiing at Whistler, but I need to be back in Glasgow by next weekend." Finn's mother spotted him standing by the door with his bag of rocks. "Have you finished all your homework?" she said sternly. Finn gave her his sweetest smile. "Nearly all of it," he lied. "I just wanted to say hello to Uncle Hugh." "Good for you, laddie. Homework can wait, eh? Come over here and let's have a look at you. Great Scott, you're grown like a patch of nettles. There's just no stopping you. What's that you've brought to show me?" Finn moved cautiously around in front of his uncle, with his head bowed. He always felt a little shy and fearful in the company of this wild old adventurer. Finn allowed his hair to be tousled and to be hugged, prodded and inspected. He placed the bag of rocks on the old man's lap and raised his head slowly to look at him. "I wanted to show you my collection of..." Finn's breath stopped in mid-sentence. The shock was too much. Uncle Hugh grinned kindly at him. His tangle of wiry grey hair and red beard were just as Finn remembered them. So were the rosy cheeks, the bulbous nose, the crooked smiling teeth stained yellow with pipe tobacco, the wrinkled forehead and the bushy eyebrows. But while Uncle Hugh's right eye still sparkled with fire and mischief, like a spitball dancing in a hot stove top, his left eye was gone. He had no left eye anymore. A dull grey pebble sat in the left eye socket, lifeless and shocking. Uncle Hugh tried to laugh away Finn's discomfort. Did your mum and dad not tell you about my wee accident? Aye, this left eye's not so good at the winking now, is it? But look, isn't that a perfect wee chucky stone I found to take its place, eh? It fits just perfect. Let's have a look at your collection. Finn was grateful for the excuse to look away from his uncle's changed face. The shock was wearing off. He seemed to be just the same otherwise, but it had given Finn a scare. The warmth had gone out of the room, and a prickly cold sweat ran down the middle of Finn's back, like a cold, wet snake. Uncle Hugh pulled a monocle from his waistcoat pocket, a single round eyeglass attached to a thin leather cord. He perched the monocle on his nose and peered carefully at Finn's rocks through his one good eye. Each stone got a thorough inspection. You've a nice collection of rocks here, Finn, Uncle Hugh said slowly. A good variety of types. I like this black one. It has a nice feel to it, doesn't it? But none of them are special, are they? I'm sure you realise that. Finn's mother coughed nervously. You've said hello, Finn. I think it's time for your bed. Uncle Hugh sat up. Oh, not so fast, Marjorie. I haven't given you all your presents yet. Here, David, where did you put my suitcase? Bring the big one over here. Finn's dad dragged a large scuffed case over by the fire, assisted by Riley's enthusiastic sniffs and tail wags. The case was bound by 3 leather straps and was covered in stickers from around the world. Even the names sounded exotic to Finn. Ramatage Salvage of Borneo, Palau Treasure Trove, Reykjavik Hot Springs, Iceland, Tasmanian Deep Dive Company. Uncle Hugh rummaged in amongst his shirts and underwear and pulled out a bottle of scotch for Finn's dad, a tartan headscarf for Marjorie, and then from the very bottom of the case he extracted a large square brown package tied up with string. The knots were sealed with bright red wax. He placed this on the floor in front of Finn before sitting back in his chair. Go on then, laddie. Open it up. Tell me what you think of that. Oh, you can just rip the paper. It's just some brown paper I got at the butcher's the other day. But you'll maybe need a knife to cut the string. Finn's mother went off to get scissors. David McDougall leaned forward. What's with all the sealing wax on the string, Hugh? Is that to add a touch of Victorian melodrama? Oh, I just wanted to make sure no one had tampered with it on the way over, said Hugh quietly. A few snips and rips later, Finn was unpeeling the paper. What he found inside was a slightly battered book. The cover read, Monroe's Scottish English Dictionary, a compendium of old Scots words and slang phrases. On top of that was an object wrapped in an oily old rag. Finn picked it up to unpeel the rag. He almost dropped it. It was surprisingly heavy. Underneath the covering was a rock like Finn had never seen before. It was about 8 inches long, roughly cylindrical, but wider in the middle, maybe 3 inches in diameter. It was tapered at one end, wider and flatter at the other. Uncle Hugh took it gently from Finn and placed it on the African conga drum table beside him. This is a very special Scottish paperweight, he said. You can stand it on this flat end, you see. Now take a good look at it. The colour of the rock was most remarkable. It seemed to change as he looked at it. The pointy end was brownish red and contained lots of cracks and fissures in the surface. The round middle section was smooth and greenish, as if it was covered in moss, and at the flatter bottom end it was grey and almost black on the rough flat surface on which it now stood. The texture of the rock was a bit like granite, with little sparkling highlights in it. Finn picked it up again and turned it around in his hand. It had grown warm standing by the fire, and it sparkled in the flickering light of the flames. "Well?" said Uncle Hugh eagerly. Finn felt awful. He was clearly expected to say something more, so he had to stifle his disappointment. Sure, it was a cool-looking rock, but big deal. And why would he need a Scottish dictionary? He lived in Seattle. It's great, Uncle Hugh. Thanks," he said with as much enthusiasm as he could. "Take it up to your room, lad. You're tired. Sleep on it. You'll maybe like it better in the morning." Finn put the new rock in with the rest of his collection, picked up the book and moved towards the living room door, hoping to escape before something else bad happened. He wasn't quick enough. His mother cleared her throat. "Be sure and set your alarm 30 minutes early, Finn. I want to check your homework in the morning, especially your Latin. Mrs. Holstein called me today about your Latin. She says you're daydreaming and not taking it seriously. If you don't improve, she's going to fail you." Finn shuffled out of the room feeling humiliated. As he crossed the hall, he was growing angry. By the time he stumped up the stairs, he was in a spitting fury. Yin Yang sensed it and slunk out of his way. Mrs. Holstein was a boring old cow. Latin was boring. His parents were boring. And Uncle Hugh, well, he was just weird. Finn flung the dictionary on his desk, dumped his rocks back on the windowsill by his bed, and stood the new rock in the middle of them. It took Finn less than a minute to get out of his clothes, brush his teeth, grab his Latin book and jump into bed. "Put your light out, Finn," his mother yelled up the stairs. For the second time that night, Finn decided that he needed to panic. If his mum saw his lack of completed homework assignments tomorrow morning, he was dead meat. He extracted his flashlight from the desk drawer before turning out the bedroom light and yelling good night to his mom. He crawled underneath the covers with his Latin vocabulary book. It was reassuring being in a cave like this. He was safe from marauding grown-ups. Seeing the strange Latin words by flashlight made them look more interesting, but they were no easier to understand. Finn was rereading the same page of words for the third time when he was interrupted by a gruff voice. "What are you doing in there, you daft wee duffer? You'll ruin your eyes doing that."